So we are back and we are talking $1 million careers. As always, it's me and my good friend Rob Houghton. And it's a great topic today. Rob, what's going on today?
Yeah, man. Titled
The New Rules of Success in a Post-Career World.
Yeah. Love it, man. Love this.
I'm glad you sent me this article last week. I've read it 3 times.
I've got mine. It's all marked up, as you can tell.
Yep.
Wait, see? It's all marked.
Oh my gosh.
There it is, man.
I got my notes.
The paper Wall Street Journal.
I got my notes on it, but you know, you're geeking out when you're taking notes on Wall Street Journal articles, right? It's like,
hey, man, it's like the article says. I love what I do, man.
Yeah. Well, you're the epitome of the article, though. You're kind of, you're on like career number, literally, career number, 6 or 7. When you think about all the stuff you've done in your career, Arthur Andersen, military, Arthur Andersen, you leaving Arthur Andersen, hooking up and going, telecom in Africa, you sold that business, doing some work with special operations, training them. You think about that.
Yeah.
Your business, MR Fairfax, which you're sort of really pivoting from now, and you become a very busy career coach. And it's all stuff that just, nothing you planned for.
Exactly.
But it just happened.
Yeah. I think it is. I think it's, I don't know if it's God's grace or whatever it is, but there's all kinds of signals that are out there. And I think for the people that have their eyes and ears open and really spend the time to listen to like really listen to whatever divine providence or nature is telling you, the answers are right there in front of you.
Yep.
It's within you. As they
really are. The interesting thing though is there's a guy I haven't talked to this fellow in years. I'll just tell you, his name is Jim Booth. Jim was a fellow I met in West Virginia, really down to earth, humble, fun, successful guy. And we were talking about his story. He goes, I was a tennis pro. I was a country club tennis pro.
You were?
No. Jim was. This is Jim's story. He goes, I was a country club tennis pro. And there's no money in being a country club tennis pro. And I wanted to own a business. It's like, I always wanted to own a business. And he goes, So he tried to buy some McDonald's franchises and they wouldn't sell him the franchise. So he ended up going to the McDonald's University and he kind of learned it all. And then one came for sale and it was a turnaround. And he turned it around. And then he sold it. And then he found another turnaround and he bought it. And he grew it. And then he sold, he didn't sell that. Then he bought another one. By the time when I met him, he owned 12, I think about a dozen, maybe 15 McDonald's franchises in Florida.
Wow.
Now he's great, great golfer, great tennis, just a solid athlete. At the time he was probably 50. He's probably 70 now, but at the time he was about 50. And he said something really, it still sticks with me to this day. He goes, he was on the board of directors of the Honda Golf Classic and big golf tournament in Florida. And he goes, I sit on this board with a lot of high power CEOs and they all want status. They love status. They all want to go off and run their own businesses or do their own thing and be entrepreneurs because they just don't have the courage to do it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
They can't give up the status. They don't have the courage to give up the status. They don't have the courage to pivot. Brilliant people, because they're all smarter, much smarter than me, but they don't have the courage to do it. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. I know the feeling, man. It was like when I started up my Africa telecoms business, I literally hired a guy out of the old CompUSA store as my right-hand technician because I knew nothing about wireless equipment, but I had this idea that I wanted to, start the first wireless internet firm in Kenya. I've always liked Africa. And I remember driving to the airport with a couple of boxes of antennas with this guy, thinking to myself, what in the heck are you doing, man? But I had this idea. It was like a drum beat in my head. Africa, telecoms, internet, 1999. It was a great idea. And I was just decisive. And the guy that I hired from CompUSA, he was like 21 years old. He basically took off his apron, went in the back, quit, walked out of the store with me, gave notice at his apartment, packed a couple suitcases, and was on the plane with me in 24 hours. And he's a multimillionaire now, obviously. And the rest is history. Robert Freeland, the billionaire, bought the business.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you got to be decisive, man. You know.
Well, that's but the thing is, like, hey, look, throwing caution, a little bit of caution into the wind. Yeah, too many people I talk to, big company people, corner office. They need the corner office. They need the title.
Yeah, right.
First thing that makes me want to run from somebody. Are you the same way? When somebody just doesn't understand, they can't understand the role because the title, they just don't like the title.
Right, exactly.
Like, all right, this is a position that's going to pay a boatload of money. It's going to have a boatload of equity. You're going to, there's going to be a transaction, and you're going to make a you're going to walk away just happier than a pig in the mud. And they come back, I don't want the job. It's not a senior vice president title. Okay, I get you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get you. Not stay in your big company.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
No, there's I find that the people that are like that are lawyers. Every time I meet a lawyer, he's always got some great idea. I want to own a restaurant, or I want to do this. I want to own a business, but they never do because they're lawyers.
Yeah.
I feel sorry. I guess I shouldn't feel sorry for him, but I mean, it's kind of sad in a way that people don't recognize what their true calling is.
Yeah.
So they live a life of quiet desperation.
Well, we hired a guy once. His name is Chris Noger. Great guy. He was a lawyer, but he found religion. He was a burned out district attorney, assistant district attorney in Baltimore. I can't think of a worse job in the world than every day getting up and putting on your suit to go prosecute crack addicts and prostitutes and whatever else the inner city of Baltimore brings you every day, right? See, burned out, and we hired him as a sales guy.
Jesus, really?
And yeah, he's great. He's phenomenal.
Really?
He was absolutely phenomenal.
It was like DA. Wow.
It was this big awakening. It was this big awakening. He realized that he could make money. So he walked away from Baltimore, and I think this is like this is probably about 2004, 2005. So he walks away from this job in Baltimore, and he comes to work with us, and we threw him in the snake pit. And he makes, first year out, he makes $350,000, $400,000, all commission. No, no salary, no benefits, all commission. And it was like his big awakening. And he did that for a couple of years. And then he realized, he still liked law, but it was like his big awakening.
Yeah.
And now he actually runs a law practice I'm not sure exactly, but he runs a law firm now, and they focus on easements and things of the sort for railroads.
Oh.
And he does all their negotiations for him. He's incredibly successful.
Oh, so he went from law over to make some money, and then ultimately back to the practice of the law. Interesting.
But I think going back to practicing law put a different perspective in his brain as to how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, but I think that's kind of the gist of this article was that 75% of Americans say in 2023 they're going to look for new work. That's pretty scary.
It really is true. The other thing is, one of the other things of the article I picked up was, success is really purpose driven, and it talked about how 6 in 10 people actually describe their big moment, their big successful change as resulting in the same pay or even a little bit less compensation, which really says a lot, you know. So you don't have to make more money to be really happy, because 6 in 10 people have their big pivot or the big awakening, as you say, and make the same or even less money, which was really interesting to me, you know.
It's not, well, it's not about the money until it's about the money, right? And here's kind of the way I always look at my business. I don't worry about the money. I never look at I don't worry about the money. I don't look at anything. I just look at doing the right thing by everybody that I'm working with.
Yeah.
So if I've got if I've got an executive I'm trying to place, or an executive that just needs help with their career, I help them. I build a relationship.
Yeah.
I have a client that needs a position filled. I help them. I work with them.
Yeah.
And you put their needs first.
Yeah.
If you do everything you're supposed to do if you do everything you're supposed to do, the money will follow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The money will follow. If you're worried about the money, if you're worried about the money all the time, then you're sort of stuck in a hole. But I think it's the people are now, they're saying, it's interesting. 50% of people are now renegotiating, with their employers or with their careers. They're taking that hard look and starting to pivot. What do I want to do next?
Yeah. I think as a follow-on to what you're saying along the lines of purpose-driven, I think particularly in your case, I think what you're saying is it's not only purpose-driven, but it's principles-driven. In other words, you have a certain set of principles that you operate under insofar as your clients are concerned. And as long as you consistently, operate based upon those principles, then the money's going to come because you'll be successful. Yeah.
I think that's exactly what people are starting to look for now. Maybe COVID was the catalyst. Maybe it's just different. Maybe they all saw their parents, go to work and live these, very, sort of linear lives.
Yeah.
Where you started your resume was kind of like a 45-degree angle, right? And it was all about just climbing the resume ladder.
Yep.
But now you talk about, I'm on career number 4.
Yeah. No, I mean, you've always operated with principles and standards, and you and I always talk about how we're really careful about who we represent too. We represent the right clients. If I find a client that is exploiting their workers and not operating with principles, then I terminate that client. I just talked about it right before we're getting on the air. I've terminated 5 clients in the last 60 days. There's something else in the article too that kind of struck a chord with me. They talked about how it's all about that one thing, and I was thinking of how the answer, they talk about the difference between a career and a vocation. A vocation being something that's sort of a calling, right? So how do you actually recognize that? Because it's within you. And I remember a movie that was probably 20 years ago. It was a movie about a cattle drive, and there was a comedian in that movie. And the older ranch hand, he was a really gruff guy, was having a conversation with this comedian on the cattle drive, and they're riding their 2 horses through the desert. And the younger guy senses that the older guy is like really happy. He's been a cattle guy for his whole life, which is a tough life. And he says, like, what's the secret, man? What's the secret to life, And the older guy turns around to him, and he puts up one finger. And the guy says, what's that? And the older guy says, it's the one thing, man. And the younger guy looks over and he's totally confused. He says, what do you mean, like the one thing? The older guy looks at him again and says, the one thing, man. You find that one thing, and that's it. And the younger guy had like an epiphany on his horse. And the rest of the movie was about him going through this journey, self-discovery, figuring out like what that one thing was. And the one thing turned out to be his family. That was the most important thing, because he was getting ready to get divorced and everything. So I always think about that. What is like the one thing that really drives somebody? And it's there. It's deep within inside everybody. And a lot of people don't even understand what that one thing. And I think you have to go back to, like, what were your childhood dreams? What are your personal values? What do you really value? I think back when I was a kid, I used to love to play with these GI Joes, like these army figures.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I used to set up these soldiers all over the place and set up ambushes. Of course, I was like, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. But really, that was the one thing with me. I always wanted to be a military guy, the good versus the bad, good versus evil, and that turned out to be what my one thing was. And I didn't even know it until later in life.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I think, what I found in the, my little journey here is, I'm fiercely independent. And, my 8 years in the military, I didn't want to march to the right. I didn't want to march to that drummer anymore. I'm like, all right, I'm out. I'm disruptive. I'm independent. Yeah, I'm disruptive. And everybody used to laugh because I was disruptive.
Irreverent. Yeah.
Irreverent. Then, I got stuck in some cubicle in Georgia, and that sucked beyond all belief.
Jeez.
And, but that's I think that's what happens is that, people are willing, they allow themselves to get stuck in a cubicle.
Yeah.
And then they get all the life sucked out of them. And then they don't know how to pivot between family and job and money, and the fact that they just can't, you get stuck in that place and you don't know what to do. And then one day you wake up and maybe you get fired. And maybe just getting fired is the best thing that ever happened to you, or you get laid off. The Georgia company's laid off 700 people, and it's amazing to me how many of them I see on LinkedIn going, getting laid off was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Exactly.
I was forced to find what I really wanted to do, or they all just got picked up by somebody else and they got better jobs and life is really good. But I can't imagine working for that company, just being a sale. I talked to my wife about it.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine.
Here's the other sad thing too. So you take that kind of a person, right? Underutilized, unhappy, underappreciated, never gets recognized. Yep. There's no enablement. They're just miserable in their cubicle, right? And they're making, $100,000 a year. And then somebody else comes along like you or me or a company, and they recruit them, and they have exactly what they're looking for. Freedom to act independently, enablement, recognition, professional growth, all kinds of stuff. And they get the job offer. And the offer's for, 120.
Right.
Now they go in and they resign. And all of a sudden, the boss is like, oh my gosh, we're really sorry. We underappreciated you, your whole career. You got to stick around. You've got to stay. Please, please, please. You're the greatest thing since sliced bread. And these people, because they're cubicle-based employees, they don't think like owners, right? Yeah. What happens? A lot of them take the bait. And they'll say, I'll give you 125. You show me that offer, I'll match it. And they'll get suckered into doing it.
Yep.
And that's the worst thing that I see people doing. And it happens so much that it's mind-boggling how people can be so easily duped. But I guess if you're working in a cubicle your whole carear,
well, yeah, you
probably have half a brain anyways. But it's really sad,
So I'll give you a great. Here's a story. It still boggles my mind. It still just boggles my mind. Working with an executive, C-suite person, wanted a bigger C-suite job. Got it for him. All right. And then he starts getting squirrely on me, ducking my calls, not taking them. I'm like, what's going on here? He's got the offer. It's a great offer. It's going to be significantly more pay than what he's making. It takes him in a better spot, gives him more flexibility. He texted me at 3:00 in the afternoon. This is a C-suite person. He texted me at 3:00 in the afternoon, the day before Thanksgiving.
Jeez.
And says, I'm not going to show, I want to delay my start date. My current employer gave me a counter offer, which I want to evaluate. How would you handle that?
Yeah, I would say, take a hike, man. Yeah.
I called up the client.
I wouldn't hire him. Yeah, he's not 100% bought in. Yeah,
I just called the client. No, it's not. It's worse. He's not C-suite. If you do that stuff, do that, you're not C-suite.
Exactly.
You may think you're C-suite material. You may think you're GM material. You may think you're leader material. You're not.
Yeah,
you're just looking for somebody to go, we love you. But at the end of the day, I just called up the client. I called up the client and just said, pull the offer. No negotiation, no conversation. If you pull the offer.
Yeah, because what happens with people like that is even if you cajole them or you give them more money or you counter, 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road, it's going to turn into a disaster anyways, because the person lacks character. And then a hiring mistake is a catastrophic error. I mean, it's hard to recover. So you did the right thing, man. You're right to call them up and just say, pull the offer.
Well, here's what I found out a couple of months later. There was no counteroffer.
Really?
He just wanted love. He just wanted somebody to say, but he needed the status.
Really? So you mean he went through the whole process, not really?
He needed the status. He needed the status. He signed offers. Like, look, he needed the status of somebody saying, I love you. He's got no clue where he wants to go in life. He's got no direction. He's now in a really, he ended up leaving his company and he's now in a really crappy job, which is the road to nowhereville.
Some people just make bad decisions.
It just makes, but it's the crazy thing. But, he needed the status. He needed the love. He just needed, for some sick, weird reason, he just wanted somebody to say, we really love you. We think you're great. Well, if you want people to say we love you and we think you're great, then be lovable and great. Don't be an idiot. Don't be an idiot.
Don't be lovable and an idiot. Yeah.
Don't be an unlovable idiot. And this comes down to the thing I just wrote on a piece of paper here. Mentoring, I mentor a couple college kids and they're really smart and they're really looking for the direction. And the conversation we have is, don't look for a job, look for a place where you can be of value.
Exactly.
You find a place, you dig in, you become so valuable to them that they'll never want you. They'll never let you leave.
Yeah.
If you're a value, if you just get in, you dig in, you become a value. The world is your oyster.
Yeah.
If you're just showing up to work, and not being a value, you're just overhead.
Yeah.
And you'll never find it. Yeah. The direction's hard to find.
That's exactly right. The other thing the article talks about is, sometimes you have to look at, this whole thing about work life and everything. You have to look at it like seasons. Mm-hmm. Like you may be in a position, in a role in a company that you're not exactly excited about, but you've got a family and you've got responsibilities. So the question I get a lot of times from people that I coach is, so what do I do now? I mean, I just can't leave my job. I'm doing the job of an insurance account manager, but I really want to, be a health and wellness coach or something, mm-hmm. And that's where my heart is. Everything you've told me, Rob, I've gone on this journey of self-realization and I figured out, okay, I don't want to be an insurance account manager anymore. I want to be a health and wellness coach, but I'm a single mom. I've got kids, blah, blah, blah. So another strategy too that people can use is it doesn't have to be a black and white decision. You don't have to like cut immediate ties. You can get what's called a side hustle. So you can continue doing your current job, but as you discover this inner voice and you want to do something else, call it a vocation or what your true meaning is, you can start off by doing a side hustle, by doing something part-time, and then just sort of ease into it. And then you may find out that, well, the grass isn't always greener on the other side, or maybe I'm not really as good at this as I thought I was, or this is a lot more difficult than I ever imagined. And maybe it was the wrong voice. It was a voice that's similar, but not the true meaning. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I look at these things as like, seasons. Like there's a season for work, there's a season for retirement, there's a season for family, there's a season for raising kids. There's all different seasons too. So it doesn't have to be a black and white.
Well, it's like anything. Change is a process. It's not an event.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Going, the who am I? What do I want to do? The why do I want to do that? That's a process. It's, and this is what I tell folks to do. It's like, look, if you want to make a career change, most people have earned the right to, I talked to a VP of sales not too long ago. Wants to make a little bit of a pivot. Very successful VP of sales. I said, look, you've earned the right in your career to call the CEOs of your competitors and say, I'm thinking about making a pivot, or not even your competitors, but people who might be interested in you. You've got a great background, great resume, great success. You've earned the right to say, hey, I'm just going to shoot this person an email, or I'm going to call them up and figure out a way to get 15, 20 minutes on their calendar.
Yeah.
And the question is not necessarily, hey, I want to come work for you. But the question is, it's asked the question, how can I be of value to you? How can I help you? These are my skills. What do I need to do to make, I want to make this change. Who do I talk? What do I do? A lot of people are like, hey, something, most often you're going to hear some people say, hey, why don't you just come on over and talk to us? Maybe we could scratch your itch, or go talk to this person over here. It's just about, it's about reaching out, and it's about proactively reaching out and saying, all right, I'll be a little courageous today. I'm gonna reach out to some people, and just start to put some feelers out.
I remember when I was with Arthur Anderson back in the early 80s, actually, and I decided that I was going to try real estate development. And I knew I wasn't an accountant. And back in the old days, you used to have to just go to a phone book, right? I went to the Yellow Pages, looked up real estate development. This was when I was down in Houston, called up like 5 or 6 people. And I remember it was like 5:30 at night. And this one guy, he was a Lebanese American. His name was Fred Risk, RITZ. And he ran a fairly large construction company called Risk Development down in Houston. They built like shopping malls, shopping centers, hotels, all kinds of stuff. Big time thing. I actually called the office at like 5:30. And back in the days when people actually answered the phone, right? He picked up the phone and says, oh, it's Fred Risk. And immediately a chill went down my spine. I'm like, now what do I do? I said, Mr. Risk, my name is Rob Houghton, and I work for Arthur Anderson, and I'm thinking about a career in real estate development. Man, I'd really like to buy you lunch or pick your brain. It just sort of came out.
Yeah.
He's like, and he was the nicest guy. I said, really? He says, you're just calling me up? He says, how did you get my number? I said, I got you out of the Yellow Pages, man. He says, I know your reputation. And he goes, come on over. I said, really? He says, come on over to my place. And of course, I lived in Houston. He lived in Houston. He invited me over to his house, which was a palatial mansion.
Right.
You can imagine, like, this guy's one of the biggest construction guys in Houston. Had dinner with the guy, had a couple of drinks. He said, come into my office tomorrow. I don't know what we have available, but I got you an appointment with our HR.
Yep.
So I went over there the next day and had a great meeting. I never saw Fred again. And it turns out there were no openings. So it was I don't want to call it a fool's errand, but it was pretty cool, actually, the way I just called this guy up and got an appointment the next day.
But it gave you the confidence to go do it again.
Confidence.
Gave you the confidence to go do it again. Yeah, I got a job. I was driving through Dallas. I called up a guy and said, "Hey, I'm in town. Why don't I just buy you lunch?" And he said, "Why don't you come up to my office?" I can't go out to lunch. I'm too busy. Why don't you come to my office and have a conversation? Had a conversation. He introduced me to a couple of people. And they're like, "Hey, are you ready to make a change?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am." As a matter of fact, they said, "All right, how about California?" I said, "California's fine." Within 24 hours, I had a job offer on the table. I got engaged to Lisa. We packed our trash within 45 days. We packed our trash and moved to within 90 days. New job, got married, packed our trash, sold 2 houses, packed our trash, and moved to California. Had kids, all because of a phone call.
And you got to live in California.
You got to live in California. But I think that's kind of like what I loved about this article, and I hope people will go and they'll go look it up. And what they find is, hey, look, the answer to a lot of people, yes, people are looking for new jobs. People are renegotiating their lives with their employers. But the question is start thinking about, it's not a linear process. It's not your resume. It's figuring out who you are and what you're really looking for.
Yeah.
And not being afraid to go get it.
Yeah. And think about, as you're running or jogging or on the treadmill, whatever, just think about like the one thing. What is the one thing? The
one thing.
If you can figure out like what the one thing is, man, you're like 99% there. After that, it's just execution. And maybe, as we also discussed, another tactical thing you could do is if you identify what that one thing is, doesn't necessarily mean you got to quit your job. Mm-hmm. It might mean you get a side hustle.
Pivot.
It's a process, man.
It's a process.
That's great advice. It's a process, not an event.
And it's all good. Rob, how do people, you're coaching a lot. How do people get a hold of you these days?
Man, I tell you, I'm on the run, man. But I'm all over the internet. They can go to my website, www.mrfairfax.com. I'm on LinkedIn. And my email, the easiest way to get a hold of me is just rob@mrfairfax.com.
I love your blogs. You're all over the internet. I love your blogs on the internet. They're great. They hit the point.
Yeah, man.
They're good stuff. So cool.
Good, man.
Awesome, dude. Well, let's save it up for the next one.
Yeah, man. Keep reading the Wall Street Journal, everyone out there. Okay.
Take notes.
The paper edition.
Awesome. Happy Friday.
Peace, brother. Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed the latest edition of the Aerospace Executive Podcast. You can reach out to me directly, Craig at NorthstarESG.com, or check us out at www.northstaresg.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, or on YouTube. Just do a search for Aerospace Executive Podcast. Thanks again. I'm Craig Piven.